This is a great exercise for drawing from imagination, or when you simply don't know what to draw. You are going to start by making a bunch of fairly random shapes on your paper. I am using watercolor here, because the paint flows and it is less in my control, but I've done this with pens and markers before. Anything that creates a light pigment that you can take some form of ink or pencil over at the end. Once you are done with those colors, or like me, the patches of watercolor have dried, you are ready to start working over the top of the color blotches. What are you going to work on with them? Well, there are 3 distinct strategies. For the first, I'm going to try and see something in the splotch of color and let it inform what I want to create. This of course involves some imagination and seeking to pull apart what might look like absolute nonsense at first. As I begin, I create a strange centaur-like creature, then move on to an awkward snake, and finally end with a man wrapped up to combat some fairly extreme winds. These could have been a dozen other things, I am sure, but I just let my imagination run, and this is what occurred to me. Well, what if you don't see anything in particular, or you're looking for a greater challenge? For the second strategy, I gave myself this challenge, to turn each of these shapes into a person or a portrait. This of course required a little more thought. I had to stop and think before I approached each, trying to find something to work with within the shapes. The first was not difficult, but the second took me a moment, and until the idea of the bearded man and his pipe came to me, I had no idea what to do with the third. This is undeniably a harder way to manage this, but can be really good for pushing yourself. And as you work through the strange shapes, you will surprise yourself with the interesting ideas that emerge. Well, what if you see nothing? Your imagination has left you behind, or the other strategies seem too difficult? For the third strategy, I did the lowest stress thing I could. I simply traced or outlined the shapes. After I did so, I went back in, because I thought I could likely make the shapes more interesting by implying some form, so I added some hatching and basic shading to imply that these were 3-dimensional. But this is not needed. This strategy is almost like modified tracing, and it's just fun to do. This exercise in general is just to get your mind moving, your creativity flowing. It is an awesome warm-up, but can also be used for creature or character design, or breaking yourself out of art block or burnout. Imagine giving yourself a massive sheet of paper with 20 or 30 of these, and your goal is to create little dragons or monsters or funny characters out of each one. Of course, the limitations of the splotch of color behind what you're working on is going to force you to design things that you wouldn't normally, and that, I think, is perhaps the greatest benefit of this drawing exercise. I hope the strategy is helpful for you, and please give it a try. Then let me know in the comments what strange concoctions you've come up with. Well, have a good one, y'all. See you soon.